Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show and our weekly EV podcast. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome, everybody.
So we thought we'd lead today with a Las Vegas loop update for you. There's a picture here that we can throw up, Jesse, and this is the image that shows the tunnel locations in Las Vegas, LV tunnels. And I was pretty impressed with the not the existing tunnels they built, but the amount that's under proposal.
Yeah.
And there you go. Anything in red is proposed, and kind of in the middle there, you've got the black portion. That's what's already in existence. And feedback has been from people that we know that have gone to trade shows up there, that have been in that, Civic Center area there. It's a pretty impressive and thought-provoking new way of doing transportation.
It definitely is. And, I've been up there on the Las Vegas Strip, and in the afternoons and evenings, that strip just becomes a mess.
Hmm.
And it's not just the automobile traffic, it's all of the pedestrian traffic that's going up and down through there. It becomes really difficult to navigate through there if you're in a car. And that goes well into the evening. The tunnels solve all that.
And while the concept of tunneling underneath metropolitan areas is certainly not new, I mean, it's over a century old, actually.
Hmm.
The old subways, for example, in Europe, using cars is the new way of doing this. Having tunnels that you can actually use cars with, and now that we're getting into autonomous driving, this looks like it's going to be the world of robo-taxi type cars because you don't want an accident clogging up a tunnel.
I think this is a really intriguing development. I mean, the subway systems that we have here in the United States have largely all been running on electricity for up to 100 years.
Yeah,
And so it's still a subway, just that it's an automotive subway instead of a train subway.
right. And the fundamental reason that we use electricity in tunnels is because the emissions would be deadly. I had an interesting experience at the dentist just last week where we were sitting in the waiting room, bored, stiff, waiting our turn to get the
Hmm.
Novocaine shots and all that. And there was a mom with her young boy, and he said he was thirsty, so she gave him a bottle of water. And I thought he was going to sip it. He actually drank 3/4 of that bottled water, and I, pointed out. I said, "Boy, he was sure thirsty, wasn't he?" It started a conversation. She says, "I love your car out there." I drove one of the Tesla Roadsters, a test
Okay.
drive car there. And I said, "Yeah, we repair them." And she said, "My husband works for Rivian. And he's one of the people that is prepping Rivians for the mines, underground mines
Oh,
here in Arizona. We've got Freeport McMoran. We've got a bunch of that type of mining
oh
activity here,
yeah.
copper mining. But again, I immediately connected the dots. Yes, that's right. Underground, you're not going to be running, diesel engines down there because it'll asphyxiate the workers or create health problems for
I
them.
would never have thought that, but you're right. Mining is one of the largest industries here in Arizona, and having a bunch of Rivians to go down into the mines,
Hmm.
not only is it electric, they have the ability to haul stuff back and forth, and would not have a constant need for that.
Yeah, it was a cool application. So, staying with this tunneling underneath Vegas, they claim that eventually this is not just going to create that large grid that you saw on the map here a second ago, but it will eventually connect Los Angeles. And we were doing the math a little bit. You probably, if you're doing autonomous driving and you don't have humans involved anymore, you're going to be able to increase those speeds substantially.
Oh yeah.
So, what was the math that you were doing? What kind of speed?
Well, I was thinking if you did 120 miles an hour, you have individual tunnels going each way. Um, that's like 2.5 hours between Vegas and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And it would be 2.5 hours. Somebody can lay back in the back seat and take a nap and wake up and they're there.
Right, right. And 120 may even be a bit slow because if you don't have humans involved and there's no side access and you've got nothing but a continuous tunnel, now you're at the mercy of the tech in your tires and the capabilities of the propulsion system with the car. You still have air
Hmm.
resistance, of course, so you're going to be somewhat limited. There you go. What if we put a vacuum into these tunnels and provide a chamber for the autonomous driving cabin? Now you've got unlimited speeds basically in the
There's
vacuum.
no reason you couldn't do something exactly like that. Even if they put forced air in the tunnels in the direction that the cars are moving, you
Yeah,
greatly reduce the drag that's going on in the tunnels, and you can increase the speeds of the cars. It's going to be more about the energy usage of the cars itself, I think,
yeah.
because your long range Teslas have about a 300-mile range, and we're talking about somewhere close to a 300-mile trip.
Yeah. You know, this is one of the reasons that we like high tech and the podcasts and all that, because as technology starts to get applied, all of these possible scenarios begin to reveal themselves.
Yeah,
And it's all within our grasp, it's all in our future.
it's pretty exciting.
Got some people chiming in. Sammy Kamal is with us. Welcome. He says, "Hello, Lucid family." We're going to talk about Lucid and the podcast here in a moment. But finishing up the Tesla Vegas loop, um, they say that they will eventually have 90,000 passengers per hour traversing this labyrinth of tunnels underneath Vegas. And Clark County and the city of Las Vegas have approved a total of 68 miles of tunnel and 93 stations for the Vegas loop.
That is really impressive. That's going to put Vegas on the map with one of the most technologically advanced and robust mass transit systems in the world.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Probably, and it'll serve as a boilerplate for, I'm sure, other metro areas like that.
I'm sure it will. And the fact that this is already approved with the city, that's good on the Boring Company.
Hmm. So there was another headline that I came across, and it was regarding pickup truck owners. And here's an interesting statistic. In the US, they say 75% of truck owners tow only once a year or less. And nearly 70% of them go off road once a year or less. Additionally, 35% of truck owners haul something in their truck beds once a year or less.
That means I am in the minority. We've talked about my '96 Chevy off and on. I love the truck, and don't intend on getting rid of it anytime soon. I don't drive it very often. In 3 years, I've put 12,000 miles on it. But of those 12,000 miles, I would guess that about 8,000 miles is either with towing a trailer or with something in the bed.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, it's, but that you're right though. If you drive down the freeway here in Phoenix, and 1 out of 10 trucks,
hmm,
if that, is hauling something at any point in time.
yeah. It's more of a status symbol, and which brings me to this other thought that I had. The Tesla Cybertruck, to me, is the epitome of a hipster vehicle. I doubt that anybody buying that truck is really going to put that truck to work, go to Home Depot, get construction supplies all the time, put pallets of block back there, any of that. And the same type of statistic here will probably be true for that Cybertruck as well, because most of the people that I know that own it have nothing to do with construction or a need to haul. One of them is a podiatrist, for Christ's sake, you know?
Yeah, it's the market for Tesla Cybertruck owners is vastly different than the market for people who might use a Tesla Cybertruck for construction. And the sad part about that is the Tesla Cybertruck is one of those few vehicles that I could see getting abused in construction or landscaping for 5 years and still looking like a brand new vehicle at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Hey Pete,
Yeah.
did they say what size pickup trucks is that are they talking about there? Because I feel like if you own a diesel like I do, you use it more as a truck. You're gonna haul, you're gonna put more stuff in it. The F-150s and like the Tacomas, I think you're right. Not everybody's gonna use it as a truck. It's more of like a status symbol kind of a feeling.
Hmm. I'm glad you chimed in. We have a pickup truck owner in our social media team that has
Yes,
some
that's right.
firsthand experience. And I think sometimes it's transitional too, Aaron, because, for example, when I moved from back east, New York State, out to Phoenix, we had a cab over camper on a pickup truck. and I had a little trailer behind it. It was
Hmm.
definitely being used for what it was intended for.
Hmm.
By the time I moved out here, it became a commute vehicle. I no longer needed, the camper would go out maybe 3 times a year, if that. And the rest of the time, it was a commute vehicle to work. I think that's what these things end up being. Sometimes they are transitional.
Yes. On YouTube, Mustafa El Gamal has a great question, and I'm wondering myself because I haven't thought of it in a little while. How is the Tesla RV build going?
Well, the update on that is it's actually Marcus that is passionate about this project. And he has just joined GMC full time. He was in
Hmm.
our maintenance department, Gruber Commercial Properties. He is now one of the technicians and mechanics over at Gruber Motor Company, which is where the little mini home or EV camper, or EV recreational vehicle, whatever you want to call it, resides. So he is in earnest continuing to evolve and develop it. And what we haven't done yet, which we promised to do and will, is to have him on our video podcast and allow him to talk about the history of the vehicle, how he took a Tesla Model S, chopped it, and created this EV recreational vehicle, and what he intends to do with it. So it's still very much alive. The build right now, the technical challenge is steering because the seats are up quite a bit higher, and it's a steering linkage issue that has to get designed and evolve. Steer by wire is a little bit too far at this point out for us to use that. But stay tuned because there is going to be some really cool video footage of the evolution of this EV vehicle.
Thank you for the update there. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the vehicle is progressing.
Mhm. TikTok, Johnny Lynch 6356 says F-150, those are work to death. Mine was an F-250, by the way. I needed the extra, well, for that cab over camper, the extra capacity.
I have a question for you, Aaron. So, as a truck owner, how do you fit what they were saying in that article? How many times a year do you tow?
Right now, easily a dozen times. I have a trailer that sometimes will load up stuff on and take it to the dump or help people move. Like my sister just bought a house, so we were using my truck to haul stuff, and we hooked up a little trailer on it. But about a dozen times a year on average. So as soon as I get a boat, which will happen probably within the next year, I'll be, way more than that.
Sounds like you need a Cybertruck.
Cybertruck.
And yeah, that's a good point. When you have one of these utility vehicles, your friends come out of the woodwork. Can you haul this for me? Or I just
yeah.
bought a couch. I need to go pick it up. And yeah, so you tend to be busier than if you had just a regular car. Hey, Neil's joined us from the Bion Danish Genome Institute. Welcome from YouTube. He says fuel prices just need to be doubled, equal European level, and the truck epidemic will go away. That's a good point. Aaron, can we ask how much you spend per week for that diesel pickup truck?
I actually just looked into this. This summer, we were when we did the finances between May and last weekend, I think we're averaging $65 a week for Philip.
That's not bad. Of course, you don't
Yeah.
have a long commute to work too, so that helps as well.
Yeah, and also too, it helps. Like we have a Costco card and a Sam's Club card, so we fill up a little bit cheaper over there. Also, too, there's also an additives that you can put into the diesel trucks that actually helps out your miles per gallon as well too.
Good point. But Niels, I remember the 1970s here in the United States when we had the Arab oil embargo, they called it. That was
Yes.
a nice way of saying they're holding us hostage and they're jacking up prices on fuel for a number of reasons, which we won't get into because it gets very political. But anyway, there was a massive conversion to small cars back then. And that was one of the things that made the Japanese cars so successful in the United States was suddenly people were dumping their Hemi-Cuda convertibles, big engines, the big block engines, and pickup trucks. And people were totally focused on getting small, fuel efficient cars because no one knew how long this embargo was going to last and whether it was going to continue.
Yeah, and that made Honda, Toyota, and Nissan here in the States.
Yeah. And what brought it home for the American public was gas lines and rationing. We actually had an odd or even capability to get gas. And when you did go to get gas, it was not uncommon to sit in a line for 20 minutes to half an hour with car lines going around the block waiting to get gassed up. And I think that woke people up in this country that we just can't take energy like this for granted.
Yeah, I think it's had um, a cultural permanent change.
Hmm.
Those gas lines. I think Niels is also correct that if we ended up with prices suddenly twice the cost of what they are now, right now we're in a low part of our fuel year here in Arizona. We're about $3.20 a gallon. If that went to $6.40 a gallon, you'd see interest in electric vehicles and fuel efficient vehicles spike, and interest in large vehicles like trucks would definitely wane. The Americans' love affair though with the big either SUV style or truck, I don't think that's going to go away. You'd see people converting over to electric trucks instead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, another headline here is, and you hear a lot of conjecture about whether this is real or not. Is the EV demand down? And if so, why and how far? Well, it turns out that what's in the news, at least this week, is that GM's EV sales are up 70% year to year through August. And they aim for a strong Q4.
You know, wasn't the press just saying last week that everyone's going to stop building EVs because there's no demand?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And at some point, I think, we'll get into the numbers here, but at some point, I think people are going to wake up and realize, oh my gosh, electric vehicles are everywhere. How did that happen? It happened overnight. Well, no, it didn't. Demand is growing. It's just not visible to people who don't want to see it.
Well, General Motors has had ambitious plans to catch up to Tesla in electric vehicle sales by 2025.
Hmm.
In October of 2021, CEO Mary Barra confidently stated that GM would absolutely overtake Tesla. And of course, this might have been what prompted Joe Biden to say that Mary Barra and GM are leading the charge with
Yeah, I was just
EVs.
thinking
Right?
of that.
So maybe we got to give Joe some credit. You know, he was buffaloed into that. But um, they do say that GM's EV sales are gaining momentum currently with nearly 21,000 units sold in July and August alone of this year, marking the 70% increase compared to the previous year. Now, GM offers a diverse lineup. They talk about 8 Ultium based EVs, ranging from the Chevy Equinox and Blazer crossovers to the luxury Cadillac models like the $300,000 Celestiq. 2 more Cadillac vehicles are set to join the lineup by year end, bringing the total to 10. While they say GM's progress has been slower than anticipated, it remains optimistic about strong EV adoption in the fourth quarter and expects to produce 200,000 to 250,000 EVs by the end of this year.
GM is doing something that I wish other automakers would understand, including Tesla. They have 20 or 30 different models of vehicles, and they've committed now to build those models on a common platform. The Ultium platform is just a common frame and wheel substructure. And so they're not looking to sell the farm, as it were, to get one model out and say, this model is our hit. It is it. They're doing it across all their models.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the competitive advantages that General Motors has over something like Tesla, which sells the S, the 3, the X, the Y, and the Cybertruck. Only 5 models. The Robotaxi is only their 6th model. If GM really leverages all 20 to 30 models that they have and gets all of them onto an electric platform, it can sell 3,000 to 5,000 of each model each month. And multiply that by 30, you're talking about sales of 100 to 150,000 cars a month that are electric.
Yeah, good point. They do mention that it's the GM is still committed to its long-term goal of offering exclusively all electric vehicles by 2035. And of course, those are oftentimes government mandates, so they may not have a choice, but at least they
Right.
are committed to it.
Right. That's the thing that so many places have said that they're backing away from.
Hmm.
GM is kind of doubling down on that commitment. I respect them for that.
Yeah, point. I think Neil's also is adding, he says, yes, and the low gas prices in the U.S., of course, has also been the reason that American cars cannot compete abroad. He makes a point there.
That's
I
a great
remember in
point.
Europe, again, they were feeling like the aftermath of the Arab oil embargo.
Hmm.
Small cars, fuel efficient cars were far more popular and important because of the high cost of fuel. Very few people would have bought something like what Aaron drives,
Yes. Well, and another thing with the European roads and streets, and you know them far better than me, but I've driven the freeways in Italy a little bit, and have seen that something as large as a Toyota Tacoma would be gargantuan for most vehicles in Italy.
Yeah.
And a Toyota Tacoma is a midsize or one of the smaller pickup trucks that we have here in the States.
Yeah. One of those 60s barges, like the Chevy Impala
Oh,
1960,
yes.
would never survive in Europe. In my hometown, there's a bridge that crosses the Inn, the River Inn, that
Hmm.
goes all the way to Austria and Innsbruck. And those two lanes on that bridge are so narrow that when I'm driving one of their cars, we usually get rental cars there, I'm nervous because of the distance between the lane and, the other cars hurtling at me. There's no way that one of these 60s cars would have survived on that or been able to make it. They would have to shut the bridge down and have the flag guys. Yeah, quite a bit different. So here's an article. China sells more cars powered by electricity than traditional fuel cars. And there's a graph here that you can throw up, Jesse. It is the China sales. And it's amazing. You can see that the tipping point has been reached and crossed.
Yeah, in China, it definitely has. Um, what an amazing graph. You would not have thought 3 years ago, when EV sales were 10% in China, that it was going to grow this rapidly.
Hmm.
And you look at 2024, and you see that the growth is as rapid in 2024 as it's ever been. Um, to me, think about the South Central Asian areas of the world and how readily they have adopted new technologies.
Historically, yes. Yeah.
Historically, whether it's the smartphones, 4K TVs, um, yeah, kind of a you name it of popular technologies that have made it across the world. So many of them in the last 20 years have originated in that South Central Asian area that includes South Korea and China and in Japan, and and I can't help but think, okay, does this mean that in another 2 to 3 years we're going to see this spread across Europe and the United States?
It would be wonderful if it did. And, the other thing that I think about is in the last century, no one regarded China as having much potential. Could they be an economic powerhouse? We all, suspected that they have, of course, billions of people or over a billion people, like India.
Yeah.
But no one really thought that they could grow a middle class very quickly. And personally, I'm very impressed with what's been going on in China for the last 20 years or so.
You have to respect that. 20 years ago, when it said China's economy is growing 10% a year, you're like, yeah, but the economy is so small that 10% a year is nothing.
Right.
Now that's not the case.
So good news for electric cars in China at 51%, ICE vehicles 49%, and it looks like that trend's going to continue.
It does. We've got a couple more things. YouTube, Neil says, or it could not, with Tesla's accepted. And I don't remember all the context on that. I think he was talking about the cars with the fuel and the pickup trucks. He went on also to say, for GM, what's the profit or loss on those 21,000 EVs?
They didn't say in this particular article, Niels, but we do know that they've been struggling,
Yeah.
and it has been less than profitable for them.
He also brings up the good point. He says in Europe there are some major pure EV sales drops.
Hmm.
We've seen that with Volkswagen, famously.
Right.
There have been a couple of brands that have definitely dropped in their sales. A lot of brands are still growing though.
Hmm. Mustafa El Gamal from YouTube says the used Model 3 from Tesla, 2 to 3 year old versions, is now cheaper than a comparable Honda Accord from Carvana. Add to it gas here in the Bay Area, which is close to $5.50.
Oh man, that California gas is so expensive.
They love to tax things there.
You know, do you think that Tesla's price manipulation that started at the beginning of 2024, because you remember it's only been this year where the Model Y went from an $80,000 car to a $60,000 car to a $50,000 car, and the Model 3 similarly, it went from a $55,000 or $60,000 car down to about a $38,000 or $39,000 car. What's that done to the resale value on these cars? Do you trust your car to hold its value if you have a Tesla, or do you think that Tesla's going to drop prices again?
Good point. It's one of the benefits of a company that has reached scale profitably. They have the ability to change the market.
Yeah.
And of course, it does affect their consumers, the people that bought the cars at those higher prices.
Yeah.
All right. So here's another article. Joe Biden plots a ban on Chinese self-driving software. And apparently, this is amid fears that vehicles could be piloted or disabled remotely on U.S. roads. Of course, what we're playing out here is that the Chinese are adversarial, that they have nefarious intent, and that their goal is to, in some way, damage the U.S. Economy. And so, anyway, the article continues and says that this is going to take effect on new models from 2027, and a further ban on Chinese hardware will come into force from 2030. Now, you had some definite opinions on the effectiveness of even tariffs.
Yeah, if you remember, we were talking a couple months ago when the U.S. announced its 100% tariff on Chinese cars, how ineffective that was going to end up being. First reason was, of course, Chinese cars are currently priced so cheaply that you could slap a 100% tariff on them and still have Chinese cars be the cheapest cars in the U.S. marketplace. The second thing, of course, was China was looking at building Mexican factories where they would potentially manufacture base components in China, export them to Mexico, and do the assembly in Mexico. And now you have a made in Mexico product, not a made in China product.
Right.
This appears to be, to me, a strategic swipe at that problem. How do you keep Chinese cars off the road in the United States? Okay, call their software a national security risk and ban the software that runs the car. Now you're effectively banning Chinese cars from ever being able to be sold or driven on U.S. soil.
Right. And of course, it speaks to the paranoia that I'm disappointed is at these kinds of levels, which if we're really going to play out this type of a scenario, transportation is moving into an autonomous type of function.
Yeah.
Where human drivers will no longer be involved or in control. Well, as that continues to occur, anyone with nefarious intent could then weaponize transportation. And it's not confined to just simply Chinese goods. Let's say the Chinese are the ones that are going to, attempt to weaponize and create problems in the United States. It's not limited to Chinese cars. Any decent hacker could hack into other types of autonomous cars. And now we're talking about, carnage on the freeways, people hurtling down the freeways at, 80 miles an hour or so. and you suddenly the hacker or this type of a government takes control of the vehicle and weaponizes it, and now you have head-on collisions and whatever else to control transportation in a country, which could bring it to its knees.
It could be really scary. I've thought about that a little bit since we were talking pre-show about it. What if your hacker gets into the mothership, uploads a firmware update, it's behind the scenes, and the firmware update is a time bomb. So that at when you're driving the car between 7:30 and 9 a.m. on a weekday, your car will suddenly stop functioning properly. And so that way, you now have this time bomb that would roll across the nation all at the same time. Anybody who's driving to work is going to be put into an accident and potentially killed. Wow, that's scary.
I hope we haven't given the nefarious individual any ideas here, but yeah, you can. I mean, if you play it out, these machines can be manipulated and controlled. So this particular ban seems like a little band-aid that isn't really going to have much of an impact. But
I agree with you there because, what's China's next move? They contract with people from India to write their software, assemble all the components in India. Now it's a made in India piece of software, and it gets assembled in Mexico.
Sure. Wasn't there a movie just recently where they took a bunch of Tesla Model 3s and they were hurtling them into each other on an abandoned road somewhere? And it kind of woke people up to the fact that, maybe this isn't just Hollywood. This technology exists now.
Yeah.
It is possible to do the very thing that they were describing.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary thing to think of.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah.
Quick question for you guys. Trump just came out and said that he's going to put a 200% tariff on foreign cars. Which one's more damaging, the 200% tariffs or banning foreign software in vehicles?
Wow.
Great question.
It is a great question. A lot to unpack there. And we went from 100% to 200% suddenly.
Well, and is it all foreign cars or is it
Yeah.
Chinese cars? If it's all foreign cars, then the American consumer is going to be in for the sticker shock of their life.
Right.
Because Toyota Camrys, Honda Accords, all the Nissan, the Nissan trucks, those are some of the most popular cars in the market today. And we're talking tariffs on those suddenly as well. Your $30,000 Nissan Sentra is all of a sudden a $90,000 car.
For me, the whole absurdity of controlling free market has some questionable elements in it for me. What if we just simply allow free market to operate? Well, in that scenario, China would quickly develop a middle class and the prices would go up and it would all even out at some point, would it not?
It would.
So it's it's an interesting conundrum that we're in here.
Rafael de Mestre might have something about the borderless world and no countries and stuff like that.
Yes. And if you happen to watch our AI podcast every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, these are the kinds of things we hypothesize and theorize and, what could be and what will the eventuality be. And if we head toward a utopian society, then none of these kinds of nefarious intents have any meaning anymore.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we've got a whole bunch of people chiming in. TikTok, Van Goatwagon, welcome back. He says, what market is more successful selling hybrids?
The U.S. market has been really moving toward hybrids. I don't like the overall hybrid. I think it's a too complex of a technology, but there is something to be said of getting people used to the idea of having electricity to propel themselves, even though it has a gas engine as well.
Instagram, Shaw CEO. Okay. He says Israel made tech a lot less trustworthy. Super sad time for technology.
I'm sure he's referring to all those pagers and cell phones that blew up on people.
Yeah.
Injured thousands and killed dozens. It's point.
In all fairness, no one has yet claimed responsibility, but there is a smoking gun, it appears.
It does appear so.
Yeah. YouTube, Mustafa El Gamal says the same people who told us that we need to switch to EV to save the globe are banning the solution that will accelerate. That happened a couple of months ago. CloudStrike brought all Windows computers worldwide to a halt.
Mustafa he's wrong that it wasn't all Windows computers,
Mm-hmm.
but he's right that it was all CloudStrike clients that were brought to their knees.
Right.
Just a couple months ago, and do you agree? I agree with this. You know, the people that are bringing the EV solutions to the world, now the governments are trying to inhibit that. And they don't trust the Chinese. They don't trust the Chinese government. They're afraid
Yeah.
that the Chinese are going to take over the marketplace, and then the Chinese are then going to, once they've taken over the marketplace, put everybody out of business, then they'll swoop in and say, we control you, we control your economy.
And in management, how do you mitigate trust issues? Communication,
Yeah.
dialogue, diplomatic attempts, all of that. If we begin to realize that China can be a powerful partner, in many ways already is, I think a lot of this begins to dissipate. But we have some work to do.
Yes.
Instagram, Okie Tesla guy says, need one of those shirts. Are they offered on your website? Hey guys, are we close to offering anything like that yet?
Not yet. We're in the process of rebuilding our website.
That's true. Yes, we have a WordPress platform, and we're finding that software ages these days. And as it does, you get phenomena like your plugins don't work anymore, and you get deprecation. The software can't communicate with the newer stuff anymore. And so we're in the process of rebuilding. But the eventual goal is, yes, we will have swag on our websites.
Yes, and in addition to rebuilding, I know we're future-proofing the site so that it will be a little more compatible with the updates that come.
And many thanks to the web team, which is also sitting back there in social media for making all this happen.
Yes, and Mustafa El Gamal did say many, not all Windows computers.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. Many Windows computers.
Quick headline here. Lucid Motors expands in Detroit to attract top engineering talent. This is going to be in Southfield, Michigan, just 15 miles northwest of Detroit. It is so the company aims to leverage the area's renowned engineering talent pool as it embarks on its next phase of growth. I love the term leverage. Leverage is a euphemism for poach. They're going to poach a bunch of talented people there. They say we need talent and we need it quickly, and that's what this hub is all about. Good news for Lucid investors, because we're all waiting for, what's the next step? When are we going to see some momentum here? When are we going to see these sales numbers increase? We have Gravity coming out the end of this year. Then there's talk about this sub $50,000 Lucid that they may call Earth, which would begin to compete with some of these other EVs.
And you're exactly right. To me, this is a predictor of growth for Lucid as well. They've got the funding from the PIF. They've got all of this work that could be done for these new models. They need people.
Yeah.
And what better way to quickly ramp up your talent than to set your talent agency in the heart of your competitor's country?
Right. Good point. They say so far the company has hired 24 engineers at this Detroit hub, and it plans to add another 30 by the end of this year. This is according to Charles Wildig, who is Lucid's vice president of vehicle engineering. And he mentioned that the company is expecting exponential growth in its engineering team as it accelerates its development efforts. All right, and one final thing that I thought we would share is BMW of North America is now partnering with Redwood Materials to handle its EV battery recycling. Those of you familiar with Redwood Material, it was a company started by the CTO of Tesla and also a co-founder. in 2017, J.B. Strobel.
Mm-hmm.
And it made perfect sense. It was kind of a no-brainer. JB was observing the growth of electric vehicles and realized that there was a business opportunity here with the scrap batteries. What are you going to do with them? You don't want to send them to landfills. It turns out that the product or the scrap batteries are 95% efficiency in battery recycling. And of course, there's some huge government loans available for this type of effort. But what amazes me is that the that the recycling of this type of product is an actual infinite loop. You can do this over and over again.
Yes.
So eventually, mining will begin to decline, I suppose, unless the volume exceeds the recycling capability. But it looks like that may reach a crossover point. At some point, you just simply continue to build new batteries from the old recycled batteries.
Well, as long as there is a lot of growth in the EV industry, you're going to have a lot of mining for materials. But the great news is exactly what you just mentioned. At some point, we'll get to a saturation point in EVs. And when you get to that saturation point, the amount of mining for raw materials that are needed to support the EV industry will go down dramatically because all of the material for those EVs is going to be recycled, especially for the batteries.
We have a picture here, Jesse, that we can pop up, and this is the Redwood Materials South Carolina plant, which is under construction. Currently, they are in Reno, Nevada, and that's where the main operations are. But when you look at this image and the depth of manufacturing space here, it's pretty darn impressive. And of course, Redwood is not the only company that sees the opportunity for this type of recycling, which promises 95 to 98% of critical minerals that can be recycled, returned to the battery supply chain. Those minerals, by the way, are listed in this article somewhere, and they are cobalt, copper, lithium, and nickel.
Well, congratulations to Redwood for landing another really large client. BMW already has a pretty strong footprint in the EV space, both in the US and in Europe. And this is exciting news to me.
Yeah. Speaking to the Redwood team, by the way, I found it interesting. This was a few months ago. The majority of them are ex-Tesla people. They came from Tesla and JB's friends. Yeah. So it looks like it's a community. But yeah, again, like you, congratulations to Redwood for another gain. And we're so much looking forward to this type of recycling, which is kind of rare in the world of manufacturing. When do you get something at the 90% plus range of recyclability,
It's not often.
We'd like to announce that the Tesla Roadster podcast, which normally occurs at 11 o'clock, will not be taking place this morning.
Mm-hmm.
We're going on a 2-week span on this particular one, and we're collecting information for the next podcast, which will be next week. So we'll do both the EV and the Roadster podcast. There's a lot of stuff in the Roadster news. Valuation is probably one of the biggest things that's occurring now. There are still a lot of cars coming up for sale. Supply and demand is definitely affecting valuation. But there are a lot of new owners that are now emerging. Many of them contact us, and we're starting that process of acquainting them with what their options are and the importance of taking care of deferred maintenance in their Roadsters. And it's going to be fun watching this car reemerge as a collectible and with this new community that's beginning to evolve and emerge.
It certainly will.
Well, we'll be back next week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Take care and have a great week.